Pulp MX Network production.
Bringing you a cheeky Brit and an American YouTube racing sensation weekly. It's the LVK More Than Moto podcast with your hosts, Leatt Phillips and Kellen Brauer.
Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of the Leatt LVK More Than Moto podcast. I am Kellen Brauer, joined by Leatt Phillips, and we are here to recap everything that we saw from the opening round of World Supercross, get you guys ready for Unadilla and the return of Pro Motocross this weekend, maybe even talk a little bit of Loretta Lynn's and everything else in between. Big Lou, how are you on this lovely Tuesday, midday afternoon for you? Are you ready for another race weekend to come upon us?
Yep, very ready. The weekends off were long, tedious, helped a little bit by the MXGP in Lommel and then WSX in Canada. But it would be nice to have some interesting and different stuff to talk about. However, unfortunately, I believe we will go to Unadilla and end up in the same rigmarole that we've been in for weeks now. The cyclone of Jets making more mistakes, Hunter's amazing, can Deegan win, Deegan's close, yada, yada, yada. Feels very much like we're trapped in a time warp. So any different from the norm would be appreciated.
I agree, but also, aside from the 450 title fight, at least still being sort of interesting because it's close and the brothers' dynamic, as much as maybe doesn't add flair to the fire, it's still interesting to see which one comes out on top. I actually really enjoy where this 250 class is because Cole Davies should be winning this thing. He should have probably taken off and ran with this thing, but he doesn't have the points lead, and we have 6 motos left to figure out whether it's him or Levi Kitchen that will win this title. And honestly, I don't really know if I have a clear defined favorite. I want to say Cole Davies, but I still don't know if I'm fully there yet. So I think there's fun things to be had this weekend.
I think it has to be Davies as a favourite. Again, I can't believe the run that we are on, but temperatures for Saturday, incredibly cool. We may go the entire summer without a horrific heat race, which, of course, we all know is Cole Davies' kryptonite. And then to add to the elements that are going in his favour, he's now heading to tracks that he has raced before, which is a godsend in comparison to where he's been previously in the blind nature that he's tackled the first 8 rounds. So not only does Davies have the momentum, I also think there's just cause for these final rounds to be his most comfortable, which leads me to make him the favourite.
I would love to agree with you, but now that you just said that, I feel like Buds is going to be a freaking scorcher. Like, I feel like one of these last 3 rounds is going to suck, and Buds tends to be one of those that it gets hot and stays hot all day, so that might be his kryptonite. That might be the one thing that is the blemish.
He won a moto, technically, at Buds last year, and one step ahead of you, Kellen. One step ahead. I've already checked the Budds Creek weather in the area just to see if we are trending towards a very, very hot penultimate round. And based on the current situation in the area, I would say no. Perhaps one of the hotter rounds of 2026, but certainly not a scorcher, hell on earth sort of experience that we've come to expect multiple times in Pro Motocross.
Don't you feel, and I mean, we're deep into the weeds of like a first topic here already, the Davies and his post-race collapses, or whatever you want to call them, because they're not that, but he's definitely been very, very tired at a couple nationals this year, is underreported a little bit. Like, I saw him throw up at Redbud, for example, after the second moto, and like, doesn't seem like many people are talking about that. Like, they're talking about him dealing with the heat, but the fact that he's that beat up after the motos seems underreported.
Well, yeah, underreported because 95% of the people that are around and seeing that take place are photographers and videographers. Steve's not there. I'm not there. To be honest, the only time I've heard that is from JT, because obviously he's there for TV interviews and whatnot. So underreported for good reason, because there are no quote-unquote reporters nearby. So it's almost hearsay as far as people who do podcasts and whatnot are concerned.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a fair point. It's just interesting because I feel like that would be something that a lot of people would would be hanging their hats on when you're talking about two guys in a title fight. And not that I necessarily think Levi Kitchen's the model of being there and has the fitness to go the distance and all this stuff like that, but it does seem like maybe he has, I don't know, a couple percentage points on him there with being able to last in the heat at least.
Yeah, without doubt. I would agree with that, without doubt. Also, though, perhaps the Davies heat issue becomes a hotter topic, if you'll pardon the pun, if he was a bit more of a charismatic interview and you could kind of get him talking about it and a bit of discourse going about what he's going through. You're certainly not going to get that, so that also puts a bit of a stunt on the growth of that topic.
Yeah, totally fair. All interesting talking points, and I think we'll get into a little bit more Dilla talk here towards the end of the show. But of course, go ahead. You want to say something? Well,
yeah, because you're very keen to move on. You're very keen to hit the stereotypical points at a podcast.
Okay.
I'd like to revisit the "How are you?" question.
Okay.
And I am feeling two ways. One, scorched a little bit after your attack of me in a group text yesterday. Blind attack.
Oh,
may
give
I
me a
add.
break. Give me a break.
And two, I'm feeling nostalgic because randomly a fan liked a tweet of mine from 2021.
I saw
No idea
this.
how.
Yeah, I saw that.
How this fan found this tweet, came across it, I don't know. And it was a tweet that I did that said, best line from the Hurlings interview I just did. I feel like an airport with the amount of people who try to land on me, which is just superb. What a quote.
It is. It is excellent.
I feel like we should hang that in the foyer of Motocross's headquarters. And now fans are replying with their own favourite quotes from the 2021 MXGP season, including one from Martin, who says, Sua said in a 2021 interview with myself, I should probably kill myself. And I'm just looking back on that and thinking, what a jolly old time we all had in 2021. What a season. I kind of forgot about the off-track elements of that. And I'm now reminiscing about the good old days and whatnot. So I'm feeling very nostalgic in answer to your original question.
Yes. Well, that was all just a build-up to the slow demise of you causing the drama at France in 22, you leaving Europe to come to the U.S., and it's the slow roll downhill from 21 for you.
It really has been, to be honest. I will concur. But tomorrow, David Luongo on the MXGP podcast show. So we will rock you and also tackle some pressing topics, and maybe we negotiate Lewis's return to MXGP.
That was a lovely, eloquent way to tie in we will rock you with a subtle pause in the middle of it to add dramatic flair, by the way.
Yeah.
Lovely stuff out of you, Big
I
Lou.
just bring it all to this podcast, Kellen.
You
bring
do.
it all.
You do bring it all.
What a season 2021 MXGP was. If you said to me, Lewis, I have an envelope here that contains a bit of paper that says you must forego talking about 2026 motocross SMX. And every week you must go through the tedious task of recording an hour podcast recapping 2021 MXGP. I would take that envelope without even finding out what the other envelope contains. Maybe the other envelope contains $5 million. I will never know, because I will snatch that envelope and then just sit back and enjoy the trip down memory lane.
Okay, yes, but to add on to your point of we're going to go through the same rigmarole of 450 class this weekend, it's Jed and the Hunter show, and there's not much else to add on. MXGP in 2021, the MXGP class, great, excellent. MX2, could do without it.
Yeah, but
Probably could not have had it.
That always changes the perception, though, because MXGP 450, SX1, whatever name distinction you want to use, if that's successful and that's enjoyable, the rest is kind of white noise. It always sets the tone. Like, if you have a 250 season that's absolutely incredible and a 450 season that's dull, that is what I believe dominates your memory. And then someone says, "Oh, the 250 class was good," and you go, "Oh, yeah, it was, wasn't it?" And that's that. Case in point, the following year, MXGP was an absolute snorefest. MX2 came down to a last moto tie for the championship. And does anyone talk about it? No, because what dominates the headlines is the snorefest that was the premier class.
Yes and no. I'll agree to disagree. Yes, the premier class does add extra to it for sure, but I feel like if I say, hey, tell me about 2010 outdoors, you're going to go, yeah, Dungey won everything. But did you see Kennard and Porcel? Like, that? There's every story that you can use to
it would dominate that conversation, but I don't think that makes the 2010 Pro Motocross season live on in infamy, you know? It needs that gentle nudge of what do you remember, rather than the championship as a whole taking a premier spot. I'm trying to think of a Supercross season where 250s was amazing, but the 450s was dull, but I can't. For some reason, I keep thinking of 07 with Townley, but that wasn't that exciting. Like, Townley had it fairly under control.
Fairly?
Not points-wise.
Three guys came into the last round. Yeah, 3 guys came to the last round with a chance to win the title, though.
Yeah, okay, no, yeah, you're right. That would be why it was living on in my mind then. But yeah, I struggle for examples, whereas you can come up with many an example of the premier class being incredible and you just don't remember what happened in 250s. But that is the way it should be, because that is just how sports works. You don't ever go, well, who cares about F1? Do you remember the F2 season? Or I can't think of a comparison in soccer. Oh, yeah, who cares about the Premier League? The championship was incredible.
You're getting to the crux of what's maybe the overarching problem that motocross as a whole has always dealt with.
This is exactly where I'm going, Kellen. I'm setting us up. I know what you're going to say.
Because every other sport, including motorsports, has their premier class, their premier series that everyone tunes into, that has all the storylines that people watch. But ours has our hands in 2 different baskets at all times, because we need to also promote and talk about this 250 class and the athletes that are in it, because they have the same amount of airtime as the 450 class that is supposed to be the premier class, and we're supposed to have more extra flair and oomph with it, but it doesn't, because it gets the same amount of airtime as the 250 class. So I'm guessing that's where you're going with this.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping you would latch on to. It is a problem. Is it a problem? I don't know. Is it a good problem? You technically have double the value, double the spotlight, double the talking points. I mean, would journalists, quote unquote, in other sports be envious of us because not only do you have the main championship to talk about, but you can also just kind of defer to the other championship if the main one isn't great. That's maybe a spot of envy, but I do think, I've said this many a time, like when I do the post-race show on Vital MX, and I think you see it somewhat with Steve's review show as well, you kind of are cramming 250s in because you have to, and you get to a point where you're rushing the 450 class because you know you've got to get to the 250s. Mm-hmm. I almost wish we could get to a position where Sunday we do our 450 wrap-up podcast because that's the main championship, and then maybe on Monday or Tuesday you do a separate 250 podcast just to give it all the breathing room that it deserves. But obviously in this day and age, and especially the way media operates in this sport, you've got to get everything out as quickly as possible to beat everyone, and that's all that matters. So that's never going to happen. But I would like to separate the two because I think it's almost doing a disservice to each class because you put so much of a focal point on both, or at least attempt to.
Well, this is why I would like to separate the two more than anything, is because, you know, in other forms of motorsports, like for example, let's talk F1 just really quickly here. There are drivers that just skip F2. And there are drivers that also do not win the Formula 2 championship that become good Formula 1 drivers. And what I hate about our sport right now is we have so many guys in the 250 class that are absolutely good enough to be on a factory 450 program right now that will not leave the 250 class until they win a title. And I feel like that diminishes the value of our sport a little bit, because we could have a Levi Kitchen and we could have these guys already on 450s, already making a difference in the premier class and adding more drama to the fold of what the premier class is. But they will stay down for as long as they possibly can until they can't, because they want to win these titles in the 250 class. And that's one thing I wish we could fix about our sport. There's no easy answer because everyone's tried to throw their names in the hat to figure out what to do about this. But I wish that would be the fix. Levi Kitchen won Loretta's in 2020. Like, I was going through the whole list, and we'll talk about Loretta's in a minute. 2020. We're going into 2027. He's still on a 250. He's absolutely talented enough to be in the 450 class, but he's still not there. And that's ridiculous to me.
Yeah, we already split the talent pool between MXGP and AMA Supercross and WSX, I guess, to a degree. We're already splitting and fragmenting our global talent pool amongst different championships, which is also odd. And then we're doing it even further, another step below that, with the classes being of equal value and like topsy-turvy in some ways as far as money offered and whatnot. So we are kind of eating ourselves alive by trying to be too many things to too many people. Ultimately, I think if there's one series that could change in the next decade, I think for AMA it would be a much longer process. I think MXGP could get there if MX2 and EMX 250 combine, and that gives MX2 a more inferior label and really puts more spotlight on MXGP. But even still, you could get there in structure, but I don't know if you'd get there in value and weight within the paddock because the manufacturers still value that.
Yes, but I mean, I'm not trying to toot MXGP's horn necessarily, but the 23-year-old age limit really has, in effect, created what I'm asking for of the AMA Supercross and Motocross championships for the 450 class, in that, yes, maybe there is an outlier where there's a guy that's gotten good enough in MX2 to still be around long enough and win 2-3 MX2 world titles before he moves up. But a majority of them develop, learn, win a title, get out of the class. Kai DeWolf jumps out of the class before he's even ineligible to. Same thing with Andrea Adamo, because they see more value in racing the MXGP class and moving up and getting that experience. And Lucas Kunin did the same. Like, you've in effect created a bigger reason to move to MXGP earlier and sooner and get your feet wet, because you know that there's not going to be a long path ahead of you in MX2. And that's what I wish we had here.
You have an eye on the fact that the clock will expire, so that makes you a little bit savvier in your business decisions, because you maybe look around, for instance, Levi Kitchen. Maybe because you're savvier, you look around last year when Prado was leaving and you go, well, the clock's ticking on my 250 career. I could maybe go there and replace Prado quite easily now. I think I'm going to jump now, because this seems like the best situation for me to jump. Whereas in reality, you're now like, well, you know, I could be in 250 class for another 4 years, and by then a lot can change. So there's no urgency. I think it changes the rider mentality of when to do certain things. It just gives you a bit more intensity in your decisions. But also from a team manufacturer side, it forces you to raise these conversations with people because, again, you know the clock is ticking. Very interesting, I think. I don't think it will ever change, because ultimately I think 250 sales are actually more pertinent in the sport than 450 sales. Mm-hmm. So therefore the manufacturers are always going to value that class, but maybe an age rule or something more stringent would actually have a good impact in America. We go back to Steve's podcast in 2012, when you and I were nowhere near doing podcasts or doing anything in the industry, and they too were saying the age-out rule, everything that comes with that, isn't working and is a bit of a mess. So nothing's changed. Why would it coming up? But I do think we could benefit from some hard decisions that really upset the fabric of the sport, but maybe for the better long term. Again, it's just taking that jump a little bit and trying to explain it to everyone.
Yeah, and I think that also what has to probably come with it, and it's just never been this way in the fabric of our sport, it would have to be taking airtime away from the 250s and giving more light to the 450s in some capacity. Like, it just isn't going to work. WSX isn't even doing that. MXGP doesn't do that either. MX2 gets the same amount of runtime. So I don't know how you do it, because you still need to have breaks filled, naturally in some capacity, and that helps by having two classes. But the only reason that these other motorsports and other sports in general have the limelight be so pertinent and so present on the stars of the sport is because they're the only thing that is on the main program. Where if you give equal airtime to these other lesser series, if you want to call it that, it's always going to get, a shared negative conflict from within the fans.
Is it as simple as we as a sport, and the stakeholders know this, we as a sport aren't strong enough to just rely on one class? As you said, we need to bolster the calendar, bolster the race schedule, bolster the TV program, because we know we need all the help we can get, so the more action, the better. I think there's also an underlying truth to that, whether anyone would ever admit it or not, I don't know. But I do think that exists as a concern and insecurity amongst stakeholders.
It does, but I also do think that it gives the outsiders that are ever trying to get in from a sponsorship standpoint such a confusing arc to follow, because if you're told the stars of this sport are the 450 riders, and when they especially the last 3 years, they come to the race and the biggest cheers are for a guy named Hayden Deegan in the 250 class who's not even racing the premier class. There's confusion there. There's misunderstanding of what the value is of each rider and what they're actually bringing to the table in terms of marketability standpoint that doesn't create a cause and effect for why you would even put more effort into just a 450 exclusive series. And that's our confusing problem that we always have to figure out is how do you fill the time effectively, give the stars the limelight that is necessary, but also don't wear them out by having them race too much on a single night of racing. So it's a conundrum that we've never been able to figure out, probably never will, and probably what keeps our sport from having these personalities bubble and grow into 15-year-long careers where everyone knows everything about these guys.
I'll tell you, and this ties perfectly into what you just said, it came across my mind at a weekend watching WSX. With the extracurricular activities on Thursday, children hospital visit, basketball, canoeing, whatever else, I did think to myself, they're doing a really good job of trying to make these guys seem accessible, fun, more than just dirt bike riders. And then I was thinking, and it was a bigger conversation on the Vital Pod about how maybe SMX needs to do more with that, and F1 has a series on YouTube now called Off the Grid, where they go and they just follow drivers in their everyday life to show what they're doing between races. And all of that is essentially curtailed in SMX because we have so many races back to back, and also these guys are riding in the week, which really isn't true anywhere else. Even WSX, I was talking to Anstey about the final 2 rounds in Australia and New Zealand, and he's going to stay out there and try to get a bike. But ultimately, even if he finds a bike, he's not going to be riding with the same stringent program as he would in America, which then opens the door for content and more extracurricular activities, as I say. So it kind of dawned on me over the weekend that the riding in the week, to kind of build on Zacho's theory or whatever else, yes, we will never be able to change it. So let's just mark that in the ground. This is all hypothetical fun. But when you think about it, the riding in the week and the accessibility that these guys have to testing, training, and whatever else, it does take a lot away from the sport because it causes injuries. It takes away time that maybe we could be using to grow the sport, make a more entertaining, informative program, whatever else. Therefore, more time for sponsors. Maybe that attracts more sponsors because the guys have more time to do events and content and whatever else. But also, it maybe puts a magnifying glass on the skill gap because Jet Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence have that time to test and really refine their bikes' bodies for the race. It kind of eliminates the element of coming into the race and not knowing if this is going to work, and then, we went the wrong way with setup or whatever else. Essentially, although it will never change, I realized that the accessibility that these guys have to bikes in the middle of the week really puts us in a box that will never change, once again, to be clear, before the comments start spouting off about how it will never change, very aware of that, but it does put us in a box quite aggressively.
Yeah, absolutely. It totally does. And it for all the exact reasons that you explained, it kind of is too much of a detriment of our sport because we just don't get that same sort of dynamic really in any other sport. Like there isn't this constant non-race weekend type of stuff happening in any other form of motorsport, really in any other sport in general. Like, yes, the NFL guys will have practice sessions during the week, right? But it's refined to a limited amount of time. Then they do their gym workout, then they do media, then they go home and stuff like that. We don't have that. We're not at the Lawrence Brothers compound with post-practice breakdowns and stuff like that, and we'll never be that way. So it is very limiting of our sport, and the only thing that we have to rely on is that these athletes themselves realize that there is a marketing aspect of it to lean on, the way Deegan has, the way the Lawrence Brothers are doing with their vlog, the way that many other riders are doing with the vlog, to try to create their own brand and image. Because instead of using us or anything within the teams or anything like that to try to do that, they're just left to do it themselves. And I just don't think that most of our athletes are prepared for what it takes to do that, to get our sport and themselves to a higher level of marketability.
Yeah, like I say, we're in a box and it will never change. Because similar to the way that Zacho's idea was poo-pooed and shut down, because it's not controllable, you can't put limits on, people would find a way to skirt the rules, whatever else, it's never possible. But when you think about it, it does make us in tight constraints that other series don't have, because there is no leeway, freedom in this sport to be a bit creative or do other things. For these guys to get an hour free to do anything is kind of a big demand and takes away from their perfect program.
Yeah, no, it's all just, I mean, it sounds crappy that I feel like we have to be doom and gloom about it, but it does feel like that's the wall we're up against in terms of growth at times, especially because, look, this is even a bigger overarching topic, but if you want to talk about SMX and its introduction into our sport as a general scale, I do feel like most everybody this year feels like we're taking steps backwards as the years go on with this existing, with the playoffs, with all this. And now the TV deal is going to become a big talking point in the next couple of years because the Peacock deal is up. People are discussing whether or not it is going to be re-upped. Will it be for the same price? Because we know it was a massive money deal. That's the whole reason that SMX even had the payouts that they do. And instead of this grandiose ideas that they had about what they were going to do and the stadiums we were going to go in, we're ending up in two stadiums that are pretty meh. And then maybe this outdoor reserve thing is awesome, but it's not really turned out to be what everyone wanted it to be, I think. And I think that's kind of a negative reflection on a little bit of where we are as a sport, because instead of having this new opportunity and running with it, we've had this new opportunity and it's kind of stalled out. In my opinion, at least. Yeah,
has it stalled out because the aspirations with SMX were we're going to do something bigger and better than ever before, and then we realized we actually can't really do bigger and better because we've hit a glass ceiling with where we are? I think that's it to a degree. They've looked at unique, different venues, but obviously ultimately we're ending up in stadiums more often than not, which I like because I'm quite excited to go back to a Supercross-esque atmosphere. But despite that, it wasn't what SMX was sold to be. It does feel like the whole SMX picture has become maybe a little bit complacent. There was a big push to begin with of this is new, this is exciting, here we go. And now it's just very much part of the calendar and you just kind of do it, you know? I think part of the commitment that could help, and I'm surprised they haven't done this, this also came across my mind in the weeks off, a lot of time to think. Still odd to me a little bit that they're still running social media channels for Supercross, Pro Motocross, and SMX all separately. If we're really buying into the SMX concept and we're really doubling down with this is the future of the sport, it is the playoffs, whatever else, you just merge those into one under Supermotocross as a show of commitment or whatever else, don't you? Like, the fact that they still live as separate entities online and we're trying to juggle a trio of social and YouTube channels and make them all good, you're kind of eating into yourself, you know? You need one big representation of the sport rather than just adding another social channel. You know, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Do the NASCAR playoffs have their own social channel? Okay. You know, like that's weird to me.
Yeah.
That I mean, but maybe that is a sign of like a lack of commitment of a long-term picture. Maybe we are unsure of SMX and whether it will stick around. That would be a very interesting question that I'd like to ask. Dave Prater would probably be the guy, or Mike Mewey, is how certain are you that SMX is still going in 15 years? It can't be 100% because you can't be 100% certain of anything. But are we as low as 60-40, you know?
Yeah, but I feel like his PR answer would be like, I'm 99.99% sure it's still going because he just wants to see the absolute best of it to work out. But like, you're right. I almost wonder if, like, again, you would never get this answer, but in a real scale, they wanted to keep everything separate in a way to still have tradition and history, and the Supercross Championship is its own thing, and the Motocross Championship is its own thing, and that all culminates in the playoffs being its own thing. And if you tell them where we would be now and go back to the start of it, if they would change anything, like if they would try to make it so that, no, this is one series, this is all a bigger picture item instead of just it all being still kind of separate, if they would try to not cling so much to the core and the history of it. But at the end of the day, I think the fans all want the core and the history, so you can't take that away either.
No, but we're talking about removing social channels, so that isn't really taking any tradition away because you're still calling it Supercross, Motocross, and whatever else. We're just talking about in the public eye how you present yourselves. I'm sure that the history and the tradition was part of it, but equally, it's a merger of sorts, a partnership between Feld and MX Sports, and without one or the other buying each other, consuming the other, and holding the higher position in the hierarchy.
Yeah.
Each side wants to protect their assets. And
Exactly.
An asset to MX Sports is the Pro Motocross Instagram, and an asset to Feld is the Supercross Live Instagram. If they had merged fully in the way that we just were suggesting in a social media point of view, obviously there's a much more serious side of this. But looking specifically at the social media side, if they'd merged in that way and then SMX goes tits up, then what happens? With like, because you've lost,
Exactly.
one side is going to lose everything, essentially. But again, does that indicate a sense of hesitation, trepidation about the long term of SMX?
Maybe it does. Again, I think a lot of it hinges on the TV deal and what ends up happening with that. Signs pointed, I feel like, last year to them still wanting to renew and things being great, but then I don't know, you hear other things behind the scenes if they're still looking for suitors and other stuff like that. So who knows? I mean, maybe it ends up being even better than it was before, but I don't know if you're NBC right now, you're looking at this whole thing and going, yeah, we'd do that deal again. Would you?
No, I think so. I think from what I hear, they're in a very good position with the TV negotiations. And if the stats
But that's
are
just
to
what
be
they
believed,
tell us.
No, I've heard some stuff from people who I don't think would lie to me. And then equally, if the stats are to believe with watch hours and whatever else, it's dynamite for Peacock because of simply the amount of time it's on, the amount of coverage there is. Really helps boost the visibility. The fact that some fans, a majority of fans maybe, are doing 8 hours of TV watching for 31 Saturdays of the year versus a sport like F1 where maybe you're tuning in for 2.5 hours. You know, that does help. That is a valuable asset, and that is a pro for the 250, 450 discussion that we were having earlier. I think, and we discussed this previously, so I don't think it needs to be done at length. But I do think going international with SMX would be the massive stamp of public commitment, confirmation of vision, and everything else that goes along with that. Because it would be like, we're doing something bigger and better than ever before. SMX has given us license to do it. Look how committed we are to SMX that we're taking this massive jump. All of that would be like, okay, SMX is fulfilling its destiny and its place in the market. Because I think the naysayers to SMX, and again, I think I'm like one of the more positive people on SMX, because to me, very, very random if the American motocross calendar is just ending after Ironman in August, and we're just like, oh, we're done. Like, what? I do like the fact that we've got a bookend on the season that's like, this is where we end. And also, again, I've said it a few times, I'm excited to get back into a stadium atmosphere, do all of that. Different formats, slightly different tracks. Again, not exactly what we've dreamt of with the tracks. But, I think maybe what we've dreamt of with the tracks has to be a compromise for the future of SMX, because if you're going to take it international, are you going to find an area, an arena, a stadium that allows you to do a true Supermotocross track? I don't think so. Unless you're going to go to like an F1 track and do an MXGP style build, which I have heard is like a consideration. Yeah, like something like that. I guess you've got the space and the facility to do it. But for the most part, you don't have as much ground to play with in Europe. If they were to go there, Australia, I think, is the same, and the Middle East. So I think to do that, you would just end up in a stadium and therefore end up with a St. Louis, Carson, Columbus style track, which isn't what SMX was initially pitched to be, but maybe it's something we all need to get on board with for this format to go further. Because ultimately, if you stick with the Charlotte, Chicago style tracks, you really are in a pigeonholed box where, you have to go to a road race circuit, essentially. I can't really think, because we don't have NASCAR ovals in Europe or drag strips or whatever else. So you have to do a deal with Silverstone or Barcelona or whatever.
Like Sachsenring was not a NASCAR track, but it was an oval. So like you could do that. Or was it Sachsenring or Lausitzring? Maybe Lausitzring was that one? Lausitzring, yeah. That was more like a NASCAR facility or something like that, right? So there's opportunities. It's just about, obviously you look at location first if you're SMX, because you want to be centrally located. You want to be in a big city. You want to be somewhere where people can get to it quite easily. And if you find a venue that ticks some of the boxes but not all, I think they jump on that first versus ticking all the boxes of what they want SMX to look like and be. They need the marketability aspect of it first, or else if you're just going in the middle of nowhere to the Nürburgring or something like that, there's no value of that because you're not even going to get people to come.
Yeah, I would agree. I do think if we're making a list, and this is really motivating me to go to Feld as quickly as possible and basically replace you in this conversation with Dave Prater or someone.
Yeah.
If you're making a list of all of the tangibles of SMX, format, track, location, I think I would be willing to sacrifice all of the other elements for location, because I think location is where SMX lives or dies. Because ultimately, we don't know what Carson and Columbus are going to offer, but it's already been shit on because it's Carson and Columbus. So clearly the location is subconsciously what everyone is looking for out of SMX. And realistically, I think you have to go international to do that, because between the 28 regular season races, you're hitting every major market in America. So there's nowhere left in America to go that would really blow people's wigs back, except for LA Coliseum. But that was only so held in such a high regard because it played on moto history. That was the only reason that was considered such a success. And what other areas in America are there to hit that would touch such a sensitive part of your soul?
Well, I do agree that you're hitting the markets, but you're also not hitting the markets that they've actually been successful at before. Like, I think that this would be a perfect time if they could figure out how to go back into Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. You would get so many people to go to that event, or go to Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas and have that be the big finale. Like they could make this a bigger deal than it is. They're just not able to cross that bridge yet.
But the issue is, if the calendar comes out and you see Atlanta on there, do you go, this is what SMX is? Or do you go, oh, well, it's an 18th Supercross? I think that's where the lines are blurred with SMX and where they are pigeonholed to a degree with what they can be, because it's held, ultimately, SMX kind of faces the same difficulty as WSX. It's going up against and trying to compete or exceed the ultra successful Monster Energy AMA Supercross season.
Yeah.
And to exceed that is really quite a task, which again, I think is only possible with a massive statement like international visibility. Because you can make the argument, okay, next year Mercedes-Benz Stadium ends up on the calendar. Could you not sit here and go, well, why don't we just use that for the Supercross season? Same with Allegiant. You know,
But
why don't we just use that for the Supercross season?
But yes, you're right. But that just goes back to they're trying to make this grander, bigger. The reason we don't go to those stadiums in the first place is because it is, in essence, too big for them to do. It's too expensive. It's too hard to get into some of those stadiums in the first place. But if you spend the money on the championship races to do it there, it adds more to it. It adds more like we're in these a massive new amazing updated stadiums and we're in the heart of America in Atlanta or Vegas or whatever, and I think that they need to try it at some point. They haven't been willing to. They've been willing to take the shortcuts and go to the cheaper stadiums and go to venues that might pay them to come, like this Branson place, instead of going to the venues that will attract the most amount of people.
I will dispute that a little bit. I know they've looked at locations that are far superior to Mercedes-Benz or Allegiant, amphitheaters, beaches, whatever else. I still do believe to a degree so if you go along with what you just said, SMX's lifeline, what it lives and dies by is, look, we're in slightly fancier stadiums than we do for Supercross. Welcome to SMX. You know, that's kind of what you've just played out. Like, but get excited for Supercross. This stadium is newer. Or SMX, excited for SMX. This stadium, slightly newer.
Here's where aesthetics hurt them. If you are, for the first time ever, you're like, I've heard of dirt bike racing. Let me turn into the Supermotocross Championship playoffs. Oh, here they are for the big finale at a drag strip in Las Vegas where it's dusty as hell. Most people can't see most of the track. The lights are kind of meh. If it's in a big stadium with a packed house of people, the aesthetic of it just looks better. It just gives the actual flair. So that's why I'm saying is like, spend the money to make it look aesthetically like it's a big effing deal, and then you'll get the return that you're hoping for and people actually saying it's a good thing.
Agreed that is the logical next step from where we are. But I don't think that logical next step is enough for where SMX needs to be. I think it ticks a box and it's a marked improvement. But I think still when you get to that place, you're like, we need more than this. SMX can't survive off of this premise forever. And equally, to argue your point about packed stadiums, I would argue you've got better hope of it being a financial success, a visible success from fans and whatever, if you have those two venues as part of Supercross and SMX. I think you find that's probably where you want to hedge your bets.
I think like specifically the Atlanta example, I think if you can get into that stadium, which I'm not saying they can, especially during near football season, it's probably impossible, but if you can...
Is that again another tick for Supercross?
It doesn't matter. I think you get that place full. The Atlanta Supercross used to be one of the three crown jewels, basically, of Supercross a year. A1, Daytona, Atlanta, because that was like the first race of the South. Like, that's where everyone from that general area went to, and you packed the Georgia Dome 70,000 deep with fans, and we've lost that. And the way to get it back is to go to where it is.
Yeah, not a bad point. For Supercross. You've just argued that we need to get back the Atlanta Supercross, but you want to rename it to the Atlanta SMX. Sure, all of that makes exact sense. Just get it back for Supercross. Like, there's no, like, what, hey, Dave, Mike, Davey, everyone, we're in 2022. We got this SMX idea. What are we thinking? Whiteboard's blank. Well, you know the Atlanta Supercross, if it used to be successful. Yep. All remember that. We do that again. Not for Supercross this time, for SMX. So we're just doing the Atlanta Supercross and changing the name? Yes. You know, it doesn't, yes, I agree that it would be successful and it would be a logical step for SMX. And of course, it would be celebrated and talked about more positively than Columbus. Of course. But I still stand by, it needs to be, it's not a big enough step for the grandeur of what SMX is trying to be. I think it's trying to be. That's another question. Is it trying to be that? I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I look at it, you're talking about steps, and if they need to take the necessary steps, yes, they do need to go international. They need to make this a bigger deal. but you have to also take steps. We can't go from old rundown soccer stadiums to Wembley. Like that's like taking 14 steps at the same time. So take the step necessary to already give SMX the flair that it deserves in the US, then cross that bridge, because it would be like WSX doing the same thing. Yes, they can fill a pop-up grandstand Argentinian Grand Prix, but they can't fill a big stadium in Calgary. So take the necessary steps. Like you said with our WSX discussion, maybe these pop-up races are where it lives and dies right now. And then when it gets big enough, you can take that next step. But I don't know that SMX tomorrow could go to a European round and absolutely make it look the way it needs to be, because they haven't done it here yet.
I would be very but again, that's an easy point to dispute. It comes down to saturation of calendar. By the time we get to SMX, in most regions, if you're thinking of going to Carson, you've already gone to an Anaheim, San Diego, Parla, maybe another one put in there. By the time you get to the end of the calendar, you're like, well, fuck, we've already blown the like $2,000 on going to these races. Do we need to go to another one? Anaheim 1's around the corner. You go international, and these people are like, here, take my money. This is my first shot. Which is where the very, very first WSX in Cardiff succeeded, and that was with Kenny and Tomac from memory. Like, so imagine if you've got everyone. I don't think it would be as big a risk as you do, especially if they were to lean on Eric Pennard and the history there with the European market and whatever else. I could help.
Race Day Live WSX Video Pass or SMX Video Pass.
Yeah, I don't think it's as big a risk from a turnout point of view as you're saying. If anything, I think it would actually be the greatest, safest situation, because you're not competing against yourself in markets where you've already played this year.
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
I think Columbus is there, because they're like, we haven't been near Ohio. No, we have actually. Cleveland's in Ohio.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, well, I mean, Cleveland. We've done Cleveland.
That's a massive underserved market that we've only just started serving, so they're hungry, they want it, you know?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if they fill Columbus, color me shocked. I don't
know if it's Columbus. And actually, this isn't... You've just kind of pinned me in a corner of holding Columbus up. I was like, it's going to be amazing. I don't know how you've done that. It's not what I'm saying, but I'm just saying I can see their thinking of why Columbus would be a good opportunity. I mean, I think ultimately, you put anyone from Feld on the record, they would say Columbus and Carson are not where we want to be with SMX, but we're figuring it out. We're figuring out our spot in the calendar. I would be very surprised. This is a question. Charlotte SMX had a 3-year deal. There's no way they've done a multi-year deal with Carson or Columbus. It's a stopgap. Because the other opportunities that they've tried to do haven't worked out yet, because they're wildly different. But speaking of those opportunities, to go back to your point, if they said, Lewis, let's go back to the envelope idea. Lewis, got 2 envelopes here. Pick where you want SMX to go. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium, we can recreate the Atlanta Supercross with an M in the name. Or a pop-up event on Huntington Beach, something wildly different. I'm going for the pop-up event because SMX needs to be different.
Yes, I agree with you. SMX needs to be different. But this is where you lost me, is that you say they're trying new things. They're trying to figure out their way. Try that shit in Supercross. If you want to go test out the Columbus market, try it in Supercross. Do not try it for the biggest. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if you're going to go to new markets.
What I was saying. I said they're going to Columbus because the things they were trying didn't work out. It's a stopgap. Columbus isn't the trying. They tried an amphitheater in Colorado. I don't know what it's called. They tried a beach in California and turning up with grandstands and whatever else. They're trying to get in those places. It's not yet worked out because obviously, naturally, there's probably a lot of red tape, convincing logistics. You're essentially throwing out the tried and tested formula of what they do. So naturally it would take time to commit. So Columbus isn't them being like, look how magical this is. It's like, shit, none of this is working for 26. We need to run these races. Okay, just go there for the time being, is where I think we've ended up.
Okay, yes, that is probably exactly how it worked. That is not the way or the flair that we necessarily asked for or were hoping for with SMX. And that is my point of there are tested markets that work that we don't go to anymore. Use it. That's your starting point. That should be the bare minimum of your starting point. And to try new things like this is where it's failing, because you're trying to establish a new market, if you will, and it is at a place that doesn't add this fanfare value to it in any capacity. Like, again, if you're turning into this for the first time and we're at this historic Cruise Stadium, it holds 20,000 people, when 2 miles down the road is one of the biggest college football stadiums on this planet, and we're not there. I don't get it, man. But that's why I'm shocked that they haven't. If they're going to try to go to these markets and it fails, do something grander and go back to the markets that works.
I feel like we're losing each other on something here. There's a disconnect between what we're saying, because I still think you're like, they would agree with you that Columbus isn't grand enough and Carson the same.
No,
they would
wouldn't.
agree 100%. Yes, they would.
think they would.
100% they would agree. 100%. They would not sit here and try and sell that Columbus is where the dream of SMX. You know, when we sat down in 22, we put on a whiteboard Columbus and Carson, and we said one day, and here we are. Like,
I feel like we're super shitting on Columbus, by the way. My bad.
I'm just going off of I'm going off of what everyone else is saying, because obviously I'm a foreigner. I don't know about anything about Columbus or Ohio, but the negativity about it has infested my mind. But case in point, again, this time last year, I did that interview with Dave Prater where he said SMX will have gone international by 2030. If he was trying to protect the current situation as he did, as you are suggesting they would with Columbus and Carson, he wouldn't have said that, because that belittles, demeans Charlotte and wherever else we went last year.
Yeah.
He would have gone, look at how great it is now. And arguably the calendar last year was more befitting of what SMX is trying to be than this year. So I see no reason why this year they would change their tune and not say, no, look what we're aspiring to do.
Do you believe that then maybe, like, okay, so let's say this, you by 2030, we all assume that that's, maybe 2029 or something like that. If the SMX schedule, when we get to A1 next year, has a foreign race on it, how much is your shock? Huh?
It won't. It's too soon.
How do you know?
You can't. I don't think you can go from in 2025 saying 2030 to then being 2027 and be like, here we go.
But you asked. But his answer was within the next 5 years. That could be 2030. That could be tomorrow. Like, that's what I'm saying is, like, how much time do we have from now till it going global for it to take steps? Or is this what it's going to be until we go global? Or is this what they want it to be to springboard into global? You know what I mean? Like, how much leeway do we give it here?
I'm not expecting any murmurs or to follow up the global thing until the end of 28, truthfully. Like, as in, not we go global at the end of 28, but at the end of 28, I start saying, hey, is this going to happen? Or what's the plan? Or, that is when I think the follow-up phase is. I think, to your question, yeah, it just happens. Because, again, I don't think there's, aside from a pop-up event on a beach or Central Park or whatever else, or an amphitheater or whatever else, I don't think there's much more to do in America that differentiates it from the norm. So I think quite quickly they probably realize, sitting down, looking at venue opportunities and whatnot, especially with, from what I understand, September is a very bad time for other sports. I don't know.
It's horrible for trying to get in the stadium. Yeah.
I think they probably sit down and make all of their options and go, international's kind of up there as far as, like, easy and good opportunities, because everything else is just a headache. So, and yeah, save Atlanta and Allegiant for Supercross, because that's what Supercross is. and we're trying to be different. And whilst you could build a Supercross track in Europe, stadium, Wembley, for your example, you could build a Supercross track in Wembley and call it SMX, and I'm sold. Because look how different it is. But you build the exact track that's in Wembley, in Atlanta's Mercedes-Benz Stadium, I'm like, well, this is just Supercross. You need that differentiating point that's like, we've not done this in Supercross.
But they're not necessarily trying to market to you. They know you're coming regardless. They know that fans of your similar makeup, if you're in the Atlanta area, are coming. They're just trying to get as many new people and new eyes on this sport as possible. And okay, maybe they do that at Columbus. I'm sure, but I don't see it moving the needle like we thought it might, and that's my biggest hiccup with it. So
I don't know if I don't know if the sole purpose of SMX is just to get new eyeballs.
I think it's part of it. Why would you, if your NBC
it's
sign
a part of everything?
But why if you're NBC would you sign this massive 5-year contract with the idea of like, yeah, we're just going to get the same audience we had for Supercross and Motocross? Cool.
Well, yeah, they like that, and part of that was getting both series, Supercross and Motocross, because before SMX, those were on different pages. Got to remember, SMX, as well as a concept, it's also a bow on the whole.
I fully believe, and from what I understand of the initial workings out of this TV deal, was that a massive selling point of it was we got playoffs now. Playoffs, look at playoffs are great. Everyone loves playoffs. It's a big thing that all the major networks compete for it to get it. The MLB and the NFL playoffs and all this stuff on their networks. And NBC wanted because it was the first of its kind for Supercross to be part of that slice. So that's what I'm saying is like, if the end of the day is you just have a little bit more audience than what you had for Supercross, what's the benefit for NBC? They didn't get really what they wanted out of that, which is massive incoming fans to watch this sport that never have.
I don't think they were expecting SMX to be a rating spike. I think they were just looking for a schedule that translated to people a little simpler rather than, hey, it's like, hey, we're in Crawfordsville at the end of August and we've just finished our season. See you all next year. I think they were more looking for the bookend on a season and something that just ties it all together a little more so. Because there's no conceivable way, unless Feld has the best salesman in the world, that you can be like, yeah, we'll do SMX and it will immediately be a rating spike. Like what? Because you're not going to get, especially this early, you're not going to get anyone too extra. But equally, we are early, and it is a building phase, which is why I think all of this is kind of SMX. The SMX website should almost have an under construction banner, because I think it is all under construction. The concept's so new, it's being molded, it's being played with. We're not, to what I think you're suggesting, they're not saying this is exactly what SMX is always going to be and we've made it. I think it is under construction to a degree, which I'm happy to go with the flow. And also, just to clarify my position, if they were to go to Atlanta, personally, I'd love it because I really enjoy the Supercross vibe. I'd love to be in a stadium. I just, from a critical thinking point of view, I don't think that's what SMX was destined to be.
Yeah. I can't believe... Go ahead.
Where did we go the first year? Charlotte, Chicago, LA Coliseum?
No, Chicago. Was Chicago the first year or was Texas?
Yeah, I think so. No, Texas was second year for sure.
So then Texas was second year. Then last year we did Charlotte. Why can't I remember the middle race?
St. Louis.
St. Louis, yes, and Vegas. To
your Atlanta argument, the St. Louis thing didn't really work out.
No, but that's because they just, again, I'm not going to argue. They're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks. The St. Louis market wasn't winning for them. It still hasn't been winning.
It was a stopgap. It wasn't the be all and end all that you're envisioning it to be. It was a stopgap.
You don't want stopgaps in the playoffs. Why would you use venues that are not going to perform the way you want them to?
Because they're building for something. They're shooting for the stars, and en route to the stars, they're having to stop off on the way to refuel and whatever else, because the stars are further away than we imagined.
Yeah.
So you got to make some pit stops along the way.
Yeah, no, it's great. I can't believe we've made it 59 minutes into this show and I haven't told you guys about Leatt Protection yet.
Fuck it. We didn't do a single sponsor read.
We haven't
I was
done one
going
ad
to
read.
contest you and say this is exactly what I want LVK to be.
No, I'm not. I'm not trying to even change the subject. I'm fine with going back to this, but I got to tell people about Leatt, Lewis. We got to pay the bills here today. All right.
Justin Hill.
Leatt Protection is in our brand DNA. It started 20 years ago with the groundbreaking Leatt neck brace and continues today with an extensive product offering of protective gear and riding apparel. But what Leatt really stands for is inspiring confidence and ensuring safety with every ride. Leatt.com to check out all of their gear. And Justin Hill, Colt Nichols were back. Justin Hill, low key, made me look good. Shout out Justin Hill.
Of course, you've seen all of the proclamations he's made online that he expects to win races in 27.
Yeah, as we do. Yeah, at Leatt, we expect the best of our athletes.
Oh, yep.
You learned anything else about Robert Lambert?
No, I'm not trying to. I'm trying to think about SMX.
Okay, great, fantastic. Do you want to go back to our SMX discussion?
No, I think we're done. I think we've rinsed that dry.
We grabbed the towel and we twisted as tight as we could to get all of that out of it.
Honestly, real talk here. I didn't really want to do LVK this week because I was like, if we're going to end up talking about Webb and Anderson and yada, fuck me. It's like pulling teeth.
Can I ask you
invigorated me. Haven't had that conversation on a podcast this year. Dare I say, the most enjoyable podcast I've done in 2026.
Okay. Can I ask you about WSX real quick? And it's not about Webb or Anderson or any of that. It's maybe the most talked about controversial thing of this weekend, if you want to call it that. It's not controversial. It's just a talking point. So we go to elevation, and the Starks whole shot every race. They said they didn't account for that, so they didn't change the horsepower limitations for it. And then they get their first career podium with Michael Hicks in the SX2 division. Zaragoza looked great in the SX1 division. I can't get my head out of calling from 450 and 250, but I'm trying to get there. What do you think of that whole controversy? Like, I heard some people say, yeah, that's kind of supposed to be the point of them having a competitive advantage. Like, why would you detract what Star Racing has in terms of a competitive advantage at elevation? The Starks are also allowed to have the same thing, but should they? Like, everyone is complaining about this to no end, but I don't feel like it's that big of a deal.
I see both sides. The difference between Star and Stark is more than just the extra
Is the letter K.
It's more than that. Star have manufactured that advantage through hard work and whatever. I think the issue that some take with the Stark situation is it's more just like, hey, here's an advantage. You know? It's not like, oh, they outworked us. I got a tweet from someone who's in the know who said, like, why would the FIM legislate for elevation? I've never known a governing body do that. And it's like, that's completely fair. But equally, we've never had a governing body, to my knowledge, in any motorsport, who's had to try and figure out electric versus combustion in one race. Ultimately, this question, maybe this is off base, I've never ridden an electric bike, kind of shooting from the hip. Could this debate not also be raised in a hardcore mudder? Like, if it's just because to my thinking, the acceleration, the power delivery, and everything of the Stark would also be a benefit there, trying to just power through slosh.
Yes, but I believe that the disadvantage then is the Starks haven't really been tested with mud, and they would get too hot. They'd get water in them. They would probably fail before most any combustion motorcycle.
I was actually joking with the get water in it, but maybe.
I mean, it could. Like, you can't.
I would think if you're going to go professional racing, you've tested in the mud.
No, of course they've tested in the mud, but all these other manufacturers have had 40 years of what do we do when it gets this muddy? Where do we put the foam? Where do we close off our intakes? Where do we do this? Where do we do that? And Stark doesn't have that racing experience, so it is an all new element to add to them, which is why I say that would be their competitive disadvantage in that scenario.
Yeah, makes sense. Obviously, it would be less so than the elevation. I don't believe there's another elevated WSX round, so it won't come up again. But
Yeah, I don't think so.
yeah, I would imagine it will be just left alone until the 2027 rulebook comes out.
Yeah, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, some of these teams and riders are taking WSX seriously enough in terms of I need to win this and I this matters a lot to us, but I feel like the further down the list you get, the more it's like this is just another race to us, and they're not like hanging their hat on rules and all these things. Again, I could be wrong, but I don't.
Well,
I feel like it's just like we're just going to race, you know.
Yuriv Konsky is definitely doing that. He would be in the category you're describing, and I think less so than that, it's probably just from a nuisance factor. You're like, for my guy to have to pass these guys, it's kind of adding another variable to the race that I don't like.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, that would be the nuisance that would invoke anger and question marks, I would think.
Do you have a biggest surprise from WSX round one?
No.
Yeah, it was pretty status quo, I think, huh?
I mean, it's going to
Dean
be
was
with the
good.
field the way it is. Yeah, Dean was good, but also Vince Freeze was fourth. So, like, if you look at Dean was great watching it, but if you look at the results, he was kind of exactly where he should have been.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like, Monster Energy Supercross-wise, Christian Craig was a better rider than Dean Wilson. I feel like you put them up against each other on any spot of the globe. Christian should probably be better right now, but Dean was clearly much better. So
I have a surprise.
Okay.
I'm very surprised since Southwick how the Christian Craig injury has kind of become a non-event. Not mentioned. Yeah. There was no question mark about him making Canada. Whereas in my mind, I was always like, is that even possible? So I guess I'm very confused how, I guess it was the result of medical exams and forecasting, but I was very confused how quickly we just went back to, oh yeah, Christian Craig's preparing for WSX.
I don't know, man. Do we want to talk about, I don't know, man, Max Anstey, red plate, number 1, Jason Anderson electing not to run number 1, not red plate?
The number 1 thing is fine.
Yeah, I don't care.
I've just got a very juicy bit of WSX news.
Well, tell us.
No, I don't think I can because it's a screenshot of a text
don't
message.
React to it on the podcast. This is the exact same the Vital thread was going at all of us about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, whatever that was.
No, I didn't mean to. I got a notification. No, there's going to be, I've said it before, there's going to be changes with WSX coming real soon. You heard it here first. Yep. I don't think it changes the health or stability of the series. So I don't think, but there will be an announcement soon, I do believe, that will cause a lot of like, oh boy, what are we doing now with WSX? Here we go again. I don't want to be the one to break the news because I'm like not 100% sold on it, but it does seem like change is afoot.
Yeah. Which I don't think that's what you're reacting to right now either.
No, it is. Well, just further confirmation of what was.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Further confirmation.
Well,
but
watch this space.
What was the? Oh no, the number 1 plate isn't a weird thing because it's just
the
not
red
the
plate?
rule. The red plate makes no sense.
Yeah,
I have no idea what that's about. And as much as I understand if WSX, SX Global, I understand how up until this point, their position with all of us has been like, why the fuck are these guys talking about a red plate? Like, we're trying to do this massive thing and you're focusing on the most pointless bullshit. Just give us credit for Calgary. But it's those finer details, those intricacies that do undermine the entire concept.
Yeah.
Because it does make you just go, what are we doing here?
Can I explain something that I was talking to Hannah about this weekend, right? I forget what we were doing, but we were talking about something like if a foreigner came to this spot, what would they say about it? Because we were doing a bunch of traveling this weekend. And I equated it to they would probably say everything shit about it because it's not like what they're used to. And my replacement for that was Supercross is such a known commodity in the U.S. It started here. It's grown and developed here. It's established here. That anybody that sees an American, that sees Supercross in an other spot and it's not like what they're used to, you're of course going to critique it. That's exactly where we're at. We've seen what is successful, what has worked, and has the rules and all the things in place. And if it's a little bit wrong somewhere else, of course you're going to critique it. So you can't get mad at that.
Okay, good question to tie it all together. If you're failed, are you encouraged by WSX? As in, you look at Cardiff, Gold Coast, Argentina, and you're like, okay, the international market is there for an inferior product to ours, so I think we can do this? Or instead of that, do you look at Calgary, Vancouver, other lesser attended rounds with half full stadiums and go, this seems like a bigger risk than we thought? I think the former, sorry. You're encouraged by the positive events that they're pulling off.
I think that you're both technically. I think that it's the same concept of you plan for the worst but expect the best, or like hope for the best kind of thing. And in their mind, I think they're like, it could go as bad as, any of the bad races that we've seen with WSX. We're going to hope that it's as good as Argentina. It's a lightning in a bottle. It attracts fans that we can't even fill the stadium with. And that's what they're going to look at as the standard, more so than what could go wrong. You're going to plan for it, but they're not going to expect it, kind of thing.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was excited to watch, but ultimately, it's an inferior product. And it's on us a little bit because subconsciously we compare to MXGP, SMX, SX, MX. So I do honestly believe we should try and not do that, but it's so damn hard because it's like having an iPhone and then someone handing you an Android. You're just going to compare it to an iPhone and they're going to be like, well, no, it's a completely different thing. Like, just enjoy your Android, the iPhone, Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see racing. I still think the decision for the race 3 not counting is a bit odd, but I mean, you do UWSX and FIM and all that. But
yeah, that is not a criticism of WSX or SX Global though, because that is just the FIM rulebook.
Yeah,
yeah, black and white. So it was by the rules. It wasn't even a decision. It was just a reaction to the rulebook. A bizarre one. I don't know. Very bizarre. Half points? Can we do half points? I think that would have been a happy compromise. What my mind always goes to? And it's like worst case scenario. I always think that race didn't count. Imagine if you got seriously injured in that race, and then after the fact they're like, oh yeah, no, we're not counting points or anything for like whatever. I would be like, so I've just really got seriously injured, maybe life-changing, for a race that we're saying didn't count? It's a weird place to like default to, but that's immediately where my mind went to.
Well, but I actually would look at it from the other standpoint, which is like race 2, Zaragoza led until about when the race stopped in race 3. Can you imagine if Stark's first race victory is stripped from them because of that ruling? Like the exact same thing of like, this could have been a momentous moment for our brand and our company, and in the end, it just doesn't count. No one cares.
No, that's a more cheerier outlook than mine. But yeah, roll on round 2. Only 70 days to go or whatever.
Let the countdown begin. It's going to be a long one. But
we'll be here every step of the way with a daily rundown into round 2.
Yeah. Hey, well, if you want to be here every step of the way, you too can join us with the Partzilla PRMX race team from week to week as we recap what's been going on with them. And we actually got some insight this weekend. Chambers and Harrison Racing, getting a little bit of excitement from them. Harrison, very good. Like, really good weekend overall. Very fast, good starts. And, impressive, I feel like, right?
Yeah. Although, again, with the field, he should be that good in WSX.
Yes, but, like, he should have been top 5. I don't know that I had him as like battling Webb for the lead and like all that, so. Yeah,
the result was as expected, but the path to it was very impressive.
Indeed, yes.
Well,
So
not necessarily impressive, but eye-catching.
Yes. They're the premier OEM parts dealer and distributor. They sell OEM parts for Honda, Kawasaki, Polaris, Can-Am, Suzuki, Arctic Cat, Sea-Doo, Ski-Doo, and Yamaha motorcycles, ATVs, PWCs, and snowmobiles. Visit Partzilla.com to see their extensive line of parts and accessories. Also, did you hear our guy Julian was up there this weekend?
Yep.
I believe Steve reported that news. Looking around, sniffing around a little bit. So
Scouting riders. Brian Sue. I could see that happening.
Okay. Is he at round 2?
Yes. Also, a question that I've had since the weekend, and I didn't really know where to put it, and I'm not necessarily certain that LVK is a place for it either. Bigger disappointment with how their career turned out. Sue or Zaragoza?
Sue. Not close.
I think Zaragoza.
No, because Zaragoza did not have the hype Brian Sue had. He had
Did
some
he not?
hype.
I feel like he did.
Plus Zaragoza, the difference with him too is that like he's kind of been around a little bit still too, like doing races, and you just kind of saw the natural fall off. Brian Sue would just show up, battle for a win somewhere, then disappear for 2 years, and you'd be like, but why? Like what?
Yeah, but that to me makes Zaragoza more disappointing because he's racing and you're like, oh, you should have been so much better than this.
Yes and no, because I look at Zaragoza and I'm like, well, that's a lot of guys. A lot of guys have been highly touted and just it didn't work out. But Brian Sue was highly touted, still shows the goods here and there. And you're like, if you just applied yourself, you could probably have made it an American Supercross. Or you could have probably been a good MXGP rider, but you just are never around, bro. You just disappear. So
He's busy. 100%.
clearly.
There is no doubt in my mind that a smaller American team will call Brian Sue for 250 Supercross based on Canada.
I was actually going to ask
in my
you.
mind.
I was going to ask you if Zaragoza's ride gets anybody to call him.
No, because he did okay last year as well, didn't he?
Yeah, but that was better than last year. Are you kidding me? Like, I know the Starks had more horsepower, but...
Did I make this up, or did Sue was going to ride for Rides Unlimited KTM a couple of years ago, wasn't he? Like 4 years ago.
That's not made up at all. That was, I think, almost, if not announced, signed at least. So,
as with anything Brian Sue related, I'm not sure if it's reality or a fever dream. So, had to check.
Would you like to pick an icon of the week from WSX, Lou, or just anywhere in general in your life?
The weather at WSX, an iconic storm.
It was really good until it wasn't. It was like, oh, we got like kind of nice-ish weather, and then it was a disaster.
I mean, we owed a cardboard tough blocks an apology, don't we? We all made fun of the cardboard, but maybe it wasn't the cardboard's fault after all.
In the department of, again, I don't want to crap on WSX. They're trying something different. Congratulations to them. Gypsy Tails Jace holding the tent down while the TV broadcast is still going on is a bit funny.
Yes.
So
equally, I think WSX has gotten better at this, but you don't need to sell yourselves to us non-stop. And Gypsy J saying while this is going on something like, these are by far the best tough blocks in motocross that I've seen. It's like, we don't need a sales pitch on the tough blocks right now. Like, we're good. Like, we don't need that right now. We're good.
Yeah. Fantastic stuff. Hey, tell you guys about Icon Meats real quick as well. 4 wild proteins, bison, elk, venison, and pork stacked into one badass 1.7 ounce stick with 16 grams of clean protein, no sugar crash, no mystery meat, just real fuel. Icon Meats, eat like a beast. Coupon code PulpMX26 to save when you visit Icon Meats, and they bring us our Icon of the Week, which could be Landon Gibson, Horizon Award winner. I'm going to take us in the Loretta's direction real quick, Lewis, to wrap up here today. So Loretta Lynn's happens last week. I think most of the talk centered around more the Zach Osborne, Philip Nicoletti, racing pro sport, amateur event, pros racing, all this crap. But an underrated thing about this, and I was actually asking Jason Wygant yesterday if this has ever happened, and it turns out it hasn't. Landon Gibson did not win either title that he raced in. He finished second in Open Pro Sport. He finished second in 250 Pro Sport. Now, he won 2 Open Pro Sport motos and 1 250 Pro Sport moto, but he didn't win either title. And he was given the AMA Nikki Hayden Horizon Amateur Award, which is basically the award they give to the next best thing coming up out of the Loretta's Amateur Championship as they step into pros. Nobody that has ever received that award did not win a title the week that they won it. Everybody that's ever got that handed to them won the Pro Sport or the A or the 125A titles that week, and Gibson's the first to ever do it. So I feel like this is a bit odd that, first off, the Loretta's class this year is a bit meh. And two, maybe it leans credence again into that Loretta's is not very much the end-all be-all because a lot of the kids that probably should have been the Horizon Award winners already turned pro.
I think it's just another chapter in the Horizon Award that has fallen in credibility in years gone by because of the lack of translation from amateur career to pro career. So I think it's just another example of the award not being what it once was.
I know you didn't watch too much, but Malinowski did win the 250 Pro Sport class. I think he went 1, 2, 3 for the overall. I kind of thought he should win it. He did only win one moto all week long, but he was quite fast. If you had to project future career right now, Malinowski versus Gibson, do you actually believe Gibson to be the better future prospect?
I would think that they both end up in a similar place through different means. Gibson seems to be very inconsistent, very hot and cold. Malinowski seems to crash a lot and DNF a lot.
Yeah.
So I think that they both end up in the same place eventually. But Malinowski via many DNF and DNFs, and Gibson through many highs and lows that we struggle to figure out and assess.
Yeah, and for those asking, I don't know anything about Landon Gibson's future as of right now. Obviously, he's a Rockstar Husqvarna amateur rider. Do you know
Kiefer
something?
said on one of his pods, Triumph 250s, which I'd never heard. Because I thought Triumph was done with AP, Jordan, and Deno. They've been telling people that. So unless it's a late addition that they weren't planning on, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, because especially they also have a Deacon Deno-esque rider in Darren Pine that raced Schoolboy 2 and 250B, I believe, 250B Limited, and he won the 250B Limited title. And so he should be moving up to, I mean, maybe he just races 250 and 450B next year, but I would assume he races Pro Sport next year, so he's going to have the Deacon Deno path of some sort, race SMX next, indoors, maybe race some outdoors, and then race Loretta's next year. So if you're Triumph, you kind of already have another guy in line. Why would you get another guy in line? But to each their own.
He'd go pro, obviously, so he's less in line, more being served now, to use a line analogy.
Yeah, that's true. Being served now. His ticket's already been taken. Yeah, I don't think there's much else to say from Loretta's other than, Zach Osborne appears to be racing Unadilla this weekend and probably Budds Creek and Ironman as well. Do you have something to say about that?
Who does better this weekend? Osborne, Beaton, or Malcolm?
Beaton.
Yeah, I think Beaton's obvious. Is there any way Eli went 14-14 at Washougal? Is that some sort of reference point for Zach? Like, because Eli went 14-14 and proved how hard it is to come back and whatever else, does that make you go, Zach shouldn't be better than 14-14?
I think Zach will be in the points, but I do think that, like, a 14-14 should be considered a really damn good day for him. Like, I think...
Yeah, I would think so.
I think if he gets, like, a 15-18 score, that should be like, okay, makes sense. Like, he's not testing to be outdoor prep ready. He even got a little bit, I don't want to say worse as the week went on, but like his opening open Pro Sport Moto, he and Phil dropped everybody. They were gone. And that didn't happen the rest of the week. So I think that there's going to be a bit of a fall off in the second moto. I think he'll shine a little bit in Moto 1, but maybe fade. And if he gets in the points both motos, it should be a good day. So that's my take.
Yeah, I wondered about the fitness thing and the fall off at Loretta's, but maybe Loretta's is such a tight, intense track. You know, you got the sky shot, you got stuff at Unadilla where you can breathe and sort of like take a moment, which I feel like you can't at Unadilla. So maybe that helps him a little bit, you know?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Zach's really good. He's a very good rider. The fitness is the one thing I would question, and I don't know that I question it so much with Zach in terms of him being in good shape. I think it's more of race shape. He hasn't raced a lot. He now has Loretta's in his back pocket, but I don't know how much that prepares you for Unadilla necessarily. So we'll see.
Do you want a fun fact?
Tell me.
The last time that a manufacturer other than Honda and KTM won Unadilla in a Premier class was Ken Roczen in 2016.
I could believe that. I also saw a fact today that Yamaha hasn't won in the Premier class at Unadilla since 1973 or something.
Yeah. Which was year 2 of the Unadilla National.
Yeah.
And Tomac's never won there in the Premier class.
Yeah, he was never that good at Unadilla for some reason. I don't know why.
He won there once in the 250 class.
Yeah. So are you trying to say we're not expecting a massive Tomac turnaround this weekend?
No.
1-1?
No, I was talking about Honda and KTM. Why would you try and turn this into a Tomac thing?
I'm not turning it into anything.
I was telling you about Honda and KTM.
Do not disrespect my friend Eli Tomac, please.
I wasn't. I told you about Honda and KTM. Fun fact.
The panic. The panic. Can I tell you about?
I don't care.
Can I tell you about the brand that
Come at me,
supports
bro.
Eli Tomac every single weekend? And of course, it is Alpinestars. Hey, their Tech Air MX uses a sophisticated activation algorithm designed specifically for ruts, berms, jumps, and whoops, deploying instantly when it matters most. It's a fully autonomous airbag built into a compact chest protector, offering CE Level 1 protection on the chest and back, and when deployed, 4 times the back protection of passive armor alone. Thank Alpinestars for supporting our show. Alpinestars Protects is where you need to be to find all of your protection needs. And I think that is going to be our show, unless you've got something else to add, Big Lou.
No, I think I'm done. I'm just, praise the Lord that we did not do 20 minutes of trying to assess who is better out of Hunter and Jet. Praise the Lord.
Other pods this week might do it, but not us, my friend. Not us.
Is there a BMP this week?
Yes, there is.
I'm quite excited for the WSX discussion on there, but then maybe I'm expecting more than I'm going to get, seeing as DB is, of course, ingrained.
Well, DB's going to say a lot of positive things for sure.
Yeah, and I'm kind of thinking that like it'll be
on this show.
Yeah, so I don't know what I'm expecting. But nonetheless, this has made me think. In my pleasant conversation with David tomorrow, I am going to say to him, has anyone from Feld reached out to you to help with bringing SMX to Europe? Because that would also make sense, wouldn't it? Like, they've got the experience of building tracks on road race courses, yada, 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 yada. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, SMX goes to Europe and it's an in-front run event. I don't know what the terminology would be. SMX goes to Europe in conjunction with in-front moto racing? I don't know.
How, they've obviously had a bit more, like, discussions, I guess is the right way to put it, but in general, in front and the U.S. side as a whole, Feld, MX Sports, and all that stuff seem to be working a little bit better together lately than maybe ever.
Yeah, of course, everyone knows that.
Yeah, so how good of a relationship do you think that really is, though? Like, do you think that's just like because we want Motocross of Nations in the U.S., it's a good market for us, MXGP is okay to facilitate a better relationship between the two of them, yada, yada, this? Or do you actually think there could be a bridged gap there where, hey, we'll help you with this SMX stuff if we can make, USA markets a little bit more possible for the MXGP side kind of thing?
Yeah, of course we all. That's Kellen. Catch up. We've been there. That's what they've all said it publicly. That's why they're friends now. Like they talk once a week. They have this back and forth and whatever else. I think that Feld would like to run a nations. Like, yeah.
But I'm saying, like, when it actually comes to, hey, we are now stepping into Europe, how much does that relationship still stay intact is what I'm trying to say.
Well, Kellen, you've just completely repeated what I just said I was going to ask David. And why I'm going to ask it. You've just repeated what I've just talked to you about.
I'm trying to ask your predictions of it, Lewis. I'm trying to ask if you think it's going to maintain a steady balance.
I'm going to ask David tomorrow, and then I'll give you my prediction. But if this is a reason for the foundation of the discussions, That's right. To create a bridge between the continents that both parties can use. That's kind of besides showing a uniformity. Uniformity? Is that a word?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. besides showing uniformity in the face of WSX when it first came around, it was also to open up previously closed connections and bridges and whatever else. So I think it's all possible with this relationship. I think they love each other. I think they speak very highly. Not love each other enough to get David's name correct on TV, but besides that...
Yeah, well, just please don't call him Dan tomorrow. We got to move
Wheeler
past
will.
this.
I know for a fact Wheeler will call him Dan in the first 4 minutes, 100%. $1,000,000%.
Why?
I don't know, funny.
But like,
He'll probably ask if he's aware of the joke and if he's aware where it stems from.
that seems so anti-Wheeler because we look at him as so professional that he would just be like, oh, it's just all rubbish, isn't it? Why would we talk about that?
No, I don't know. I feel like Wheeler will bring it up. Let's see.
All right, well, friendly wager?
Yeah, I think it will come up.
Okay.
It will come up.
All right, cool. All right, well, this has been another Leatt LVK More Than Moto podcast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this long discussion about the state of our sport and everything that's going on to it as we head back to the racing this weekend in Unadilla. Excited to see what happens. Excited to see people get upside down on the sky shot and see who's the red plate holders as we leave the upstate of New York. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks for Leatt for backing the show, and we'll see you guys next week.